Welcome in. Get comfortable. We are thrilled to have you here today for a custom-tailored deep dive designed specifically for you.
Yeah, so glad you could join us today.
Today we are taking on a mission to explore a dilemma that it silently paralyzes so many of us.
It really does.
We're looking at the very real danger of waiting for the perfect moment to make a massive life decision. It's a hurdle that shows up everywhere in our careers, our relationships, and as we are going to explore today, our finances.
Absolutely. The financial side is where it gets incredibly measurable.
Exactly. So, our source material for this deep dive is a deeply insightful piece from Jamaica Homes. It's titled, "Is Waiting for the Perfect Mortgage Rate Holding Jamaicans Back from Owning a Home?"
It is a brilliant piece.
It is. Now, you might be asking yourself what Jamaican real estate has to do with your life. But what we're about to uncover here, it goes far beyond property in the Caribbean.
Oh, way beyond.
This material is a masterclass in human psychology. It breaks down the ongoing battle between perception and mathematics, and it exposes the hidden, often invisible costs of simply standing still.
That is the absolute core of it. The source material uses the Jamaican housing market as a very specific lens to examine a completely universal human behavior.
Right.
Because as a species, we constantly try to time our big moves to, well, absolute perfection. We hold out, we hope to eliminate all risk and maximize every possible advantage.
Which makes sense on paper, you know?
On paper, sure. But that relentless pursuit of perfection frequently blinds us to the actual reality on the ground. When we look at the data and the psychology presented here, it becomes incredibly clear just how easily our brains can trick us.
Trick us into missing out on the exact things we're trying so hard to secure.
Precisely.
Okay, let's unpack this. The material highlights a widespread shared hesitation. It describes this quiet question that is echoing across Jamaica right now.
Yes, from the bustling streets of Kingston to the coastlines of Montego Bay.
Right, and out through Spanish Town to Mandeville. Aspiring homeowners are all quietly asking themselves the exact same thing. Should I wait just a little longer before buying?
It's a question built on pure logic, or at least the illusion of logic.
Yeah, on the surface, that thinking seems incredibly logical. If mortgage interest rates fall, your monthly payments become easier to manage.
Exactly.
When you're staring down one of the largest financial investments of your life, the instinct to hold out for a more favorable lending environment, it feels like the responsible thing to do.
It feels responsible until you realize that the perfect moment to buy a home is effectively a moving target.
A moving target.
Right. What happens is that buyers develop tunnel vision. They become completely fixated on falling interest rates. They're watching the financial news, tracking the percentages, and indefinitely delaying their plans.
Just hoping that borrowing costs will drop a fraction more.
Exactly. And in the specific context of Jamaica, local lending institutions are operating within their own complex economic realities. They are constantly adjusting to the Bank of Jamaica's monetary policies.
Navigating local inflation rates, managing specific borrowing costs.
Yeah, it is a highly dynamic ecosystem. But instead of getting bogged down in the mechanics of Jamaican banking, the source material quickly pivots. It pivots to the universal psychology that this environment triggers.
And the psychology is where this gets truly fascinating. The text points out that the exact percentage of an interest rate takes on a psychological meaning that completely eclipses its actual financial impact.
I mean, it comes down to psychological anchoring.
Yes, anchoring.
The source material provides a highly relatable example of this. It points out that a mortgage rate starting with a 7.9%, emotionally feels drastically better to a buyer than an 8.1% rate.
Even though the difference is so small.
Right. Because our brains naturally seek out cognitive ease.
Yeah.
We process numbers from left to right, so we latch onto that leading digit.
The 7 feels like a psychological safe harbor.
Yes. It feels like a victory. The 8, on the other hand, crosses a mental boundary. It feels like a burden.
We anchor our emotional comfort to that primary digit.
Exactly. We take a cognitive shortcut rather than evaluating the actual long-term mathematical difference.
It really makes you wonder how often we all let the symbolic feel of a number override cold logic in our own financial or personal decisions. I mean, we see it every day. You're waiting for a price tag to drop from $100 to $99.
Oh, the classic retail trick.
Right. And you don't do it because the single dollar changes your financial standing. You do it because the 2-digit number simply feels more reasonable. We let a mental boundary dictate our behavior.
We categorize complex decisions based entirely on those arbitrary boundaries. The difference between 7.9% and 8.1% is just 0.2%.
2/10.
Yeah. But crossing that specific threshold from an 8 to a 7 gives the buyer the illusion that they have unlocked a fundamentally different tier of affordability. It is perception completely masking the mathematical reality.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate here, though. If we are talking about a 20-year or a 30-year mortgage, doesn't that fraction of a percent mathematically compound into a massive amount of money over time?
That's the common assumption.
Right. It seems entirely rational to delay a massive purchase if it means securing a lower rate. Why shouldn't a buyer aggressively hold out for that?
That right there is the trap of conventional wisdom. To answer that, we have to strip away the emotion and look at the actual numbers provided in the text.
Let's do it.
They offer a beautifully simplified, real-world example to test this exact premise. Imagine a buyer securing a mortgage for 30 million Jamaican dollars.
According to the source, this is a very realistic borrowing level for many entry to mid-level homes in Jamaica today.
Correct. So 30 million Jamaican dollars is our baseline.
Got it.
Now, if the interest rate is sitting at 8.5%, the monthly mortgage payment on that loan might be approximately 230,000 Jamaican dollars, depending on the specific term.
Okay, $230,000 a month.
Now, let's say the buyer decides to wait. They hold out, they monitor the market for months, and they finally catch a break. The rate drops to 8.2%.
A magical drop.
Right. At that new 8.2% rate, the monthly payment falls to roughly 224,000 Jamaican dollars.
Wait, really? A drop from 230,000 to 224,000?
Yeah.
That is a difference of roughly 6,000 Jamaican dollars a month.
What's fascinating here is the massive disconnect between the emotional victory and the financial reality. The buyer has put their entire life on hold, delayed their goals, and endured months of market anxiety to save 6,000 Jamaican dollars a month.
When you hear the percentages, an 8.5% versus an 8.2%, it feels like a shift that should fundamentally alter your lifestyle.
It feels huge.
But it equates to a difference that might barely cover a modest dinner out.
To be fair, over a 20-year term, 6,000 a month does accumulate. It is not an entirely insignificant amount of money in the grand scheme of a multi-decade loan.
Sure, math is math.
But the crucial analytical takeaway here is that it is nowhere near the dramatic, life-altering swing that buyers build up in their heads when they decide to indefinitely delay a massive purchase. The emotional weight they place on scoring that lower interest rate is vastly disproportionate to the actual financial savings.
It really reframes the whole concept of patience. You are putting the dream of owning a home on absolute hold for a marginal gain. But the danger of waiting isn't just about the isolated math of the mortgage rate.
No, not at all.
There is a much broader risk at play. Dean Jones, the founder of Jamaica Homes, captures it perfectly in the text. He states, and I love this quote, "In real estate, the biggest risk is not always the price of money. It is the cost of standing still while opportunity moves forward."
That concept, the cost of standing still, is where the real danger lies.
Yeah.
While a buyer is sitting on the sidelines, paralyzing themselves over a fraction of a percent, the property values themselves are changing. The market doesn't graciously freeze in place just because a buyer has decided to wait for better lending conditions.
It just keeps moving.
Exactly. The Jamaican housing market, as outlined in the source, is experiencing steadily rising demand. There is population growth, significant investment flowing in from the Jamaican diaspora, and new developments continuously breaking ground.
And all of this macroeconomic activity drives property values upward.
Upward. Always upward in this context.
And that leads to the ultimate irony in this entire waiting game. If you are holding out for a lower interest rate to save money, but the actual sticker price of the property goes up while you're waiting, your overall cost of buying ends up being significantly higher.
You lose the gamble.
Completely. Any tiny savings you might have scraped together from that slightly lower interest rate are completely wiped out by the increased price of the home itself.
Because you focus so intently on one single variable, the interest rate, that you completely ignore the much larger, more volatile variable, which is the property value.
Right.
You might eventually win the battle over the rate, but you end up losing the war on the total purchase price.
There is an analogy in the source material that illustrates this perfectly. It reminds me of waiting for mango season to yield sweeter fruit.
I love this analogy.
It's so good. You know, the mangoes might get a little bit riper, a little bit sweeter if you just leave them on the tree for a few more days. But the tragedy is, by the time you finally decide conditions are perfect and you head back to the market, the tree has already been picked completely clean.
Completely bare.
Someone else recognized the value of the fruit exactly as it was, and they took action while you were holding out for perfection.
It is a brilliant way to highlight the illusion of control. Buyers think they are being highly strategic and conservative by waiting, but in reality, they're just surrendering their agency to the actions of others in a competitive market.
You cannot pause the market.
No, the fruit gets picked, the house gets sold to someone who is ready to move.
It makes you look back at moments where holding out for better conditions backfired.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it for yourself. Whether it was hesitating on a job offer because the commute was slightly too long,
Right.
or not booking a trip because the flight times weren't ideal, or passing on an investment because the market seemed too volatile, how often does waiting for that sweeter mango leave us with absolutely nothing to show for it?
We see it constantly, and it brings us to a crucial shift in perspective that the material strongly advocates for. If trying to time the market is a losing game, then the criteria for making the decision has to change entirely.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The focus shifts entirely away from macroeconomic math and moves directly toward lifestyle.
Yes.
Obsessing over whether the Bank of Jamaica is going to adjust rates next quarter is actually the wrong question
Exactly. The right question is remarkably grounded and practical. Does the current monthly payment make sense for my financial situation today?
today, right now.
That is the only metric that truly matters. If the monthly payment at the current 8.5% rate fits comfortably within your household budget right now, and the property meets your family's needs, then the theoretical difference between that rate and a future 8.2% rate should not be the barrier that keeps you from moving forward.
But what if rates do plummet a few years from now? Nobody wants to feel like they are locked into a bad deal for the next 20 years while everyone else is borrowing cheaply.
That is a valid fear, but it ignores the reality of refinancing. Mortgage rates are not permanent sentences.
Right, you're not stuck forever.
No, if you buy now and rates happen to fall meaningfully in the future, refinancing is a very real option. You can adjust your financing to benefit from those lower rates later on.
Okay, that makes sense.
But, and this is a massive caveat that the text emphasizes, refinancing is only available to those who already own the property. You have to actually be in the game to play it.
Wow. You can always change the terms of your financing later, but you can never retroactively buy a house at last year's prices.
Precisely. If you are sitting on the sidelines waiting for the perfect rate, you are missing out on building equity. You are missing out on securing the asset itself.
And the alternative to owning, for most people, is renting. The material contrasts the two beautifully. It describes renting in Jamaica as feeling like standing on shifting sand.
Shifting sand, that's a powerful image.
It really is. You have zero control over annual rent increases. You have no long-term security, and you certainly aren't building any equity or wealth for yourself. Owning, by contrast, offers deep-seated stability. Dean Jones frames this in a very profound way in the text.
Let's hear it.
He notes, a home is not just a financial asset. It is a platform for life, a place where families grow, stability is built, and dreams quietly take shape.
Calling it a platform for life recenters the entire conversation. We get so distracted by financial headlines that we start treating homeownership like a strategic chess match.
It's like we're day traders or something.
Right. We act as if we need to predict the next shift in the global economy perfectly before we make a move. But real life rarely unfolds with that level of precision or predictability. People don't fundamentally buy homes because a central bank adjusted a lending rate.
No, they buy homes because their families are growing and they need an extra bedroom. They buy them because they want a yard for their children. They buy them to establish permanent roots in a community they love.
And those life milestones don't politely pause and wait for interest rates to align. If you put your life on hold over a percentage point, you aren't just losing potential equity, you are losing the actual time you could be spending living in that home, building those memories, and utilizing that platform for life.
Life doesn't wait, which is exactly why the material ultimately pivots away from the paralysis of trying to predict the market and focuses instead on the power of preparation.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, preparation is the only thing you actually have control over.
The text gives very clear, actionable advice on what buyers should be doing, instead of endlessly refreshing financial news feeds. The core mandate is to focus on preparation, not prediction.
I love that framing.
It lays out a highly practical checklist. First, review your credit profile so you know exactly where you stand. Second, actively save for a deposit. Third, and this is critical, speak directly with lenders about realistic borrowing levels. Find out exactly what you can afford today, right now.
Yes.
And finally, work with experienced real estate professionals who understand the ground realities of the local market.
Because this level of preparation is what actually allows a buyer to capitalize on the market, the source material points out something vital about how real estate markets truly function.
What's that?
The best opportunities in the Jamaican property market don't arrive with dramatic announcements. They don't make the evening news. They appear quietly.
Quietly.
A new residential development quietly begins clearing land. A property owner suddenly decides they need to sell quickly. A local bank quietly introduces a new, highly competitive mortgage product.
And it is only the prepared buyers who even notice those quiet moments. For the people who have done their homework, who know their exact budget, and who are financially ready to move, those quiet moments are the exact opportunities they need to secure a great home.
Right.
But for the buyers who are waiting indefinitely for the mythical perfect conditions, those opportunities just pass by completely unnoticed. They're too busy staring at the horizon to see the value right in front of them.
The material beautifully ties this need for proactive preparation to the broader context of Jamaican culture itself. It describes a culture defined by profound resilience.
Yeah.
It is a place where communities rebuild after hardship, where families continuously adapt to changing economic circumstances, and where the deep-seated desire for homeownership persists despite less than perfect conditions.
That desire represents more than just a real estate transaction. It represents security, independence, and hope. It is a cultural momentum that refuses to be stalled by the fear of imperfect timing. So what does this all mean? If we distill everything we have explored from this deep dive into the Jamaica homes material, the takeaway cuts right through the noise. Interest rates are always going to fluctuate. Markets will invariably move up and down in cycles. That is simply the nature of economics.
It's unavoidable.
Your goal shouldn't be to perfectly time the market, because it is impossible. Your goal is to determine if an opportunity makes sense for your life, your budget, and your family, right now.
When you prioritize preparation over prediction, you ground your decision in reality rather than speculation. Once you understand your own numbers clearly, the macroeconomic movements of interest rates become far less intimidating.
You realize that a slight mathematical fluctuation isn't going to make or break your ability to build a life.
Precisely.
We want to remind you that the opportunity you think you might have missed out on might not be gone at all. The mango tree might still have fruit. But you have to have the clarity and the courage to act when your personal numbers make sense, rather than waiting for the world's numbers to be perfect.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final lingering thought to ponder long after this deep dive ends. The source material clearly highlights how the desire for a perfect mortgage rate can completely paralyze the dream of homeownership.
Yeah.
But think about this dynamic in your own life. If the psychological fear of a slightly less than perfect number is powerful enough to stall a massive life-changing milestone like buying a home, what other important areas of your life are currently on hold?
Oh, that's a good question.
What other dreams, career moves, or relationships are secretly being governed by the illusion of perfect timing rather than your own practical readiness?
That is a phenomenal question to chew on. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. We hope it gave you some valuable perspective, not just on the realities of real estate, but on how you approach the biggest decisions in your life. Keep learning, keep exploring, and most importantly, don't let the pursuit of perfect stop you from taking action today.